I used to think betrayal had a sound. Not a shout. Not a crash. Nothing theatrical like in the movies. I thought if my life were ever about to split open, I'd hear it coming plain as a train in the night. But that isn't how it happened to me. Betrayal came soft. It came wearing familiar boots, carrying a six-pack, laughing in my kitchen like it paid bills there. My brother Evan had gotten into the habit of dropping by our house 3, sometimes 4 evenings a week. At first it felt natural enough. We were family. We grew up sharing a bedroom, a beat-up truck, a father who drank too much and apologized too little. So when he started showing up after work, saying traffic was bad or he was too tired to cook, I didn't think twice. My wife, Carla, always acted like she didn't mind. More than that, really. She'd perk up when she heard his knock. I told myself she was just being hospitable. That was the kind of fool I was back then. A hardworking fool with a mortgage, a wife, no kids, and the comforting belief that routine meant safety. We'd sit in the living room with the television on low. Evan sprawled out like he belonged there, Carla on the other end of the couch with her legs tucked under her, smiling that sharp little smile of hers whenever he told a story. She had a way of laughing too hard when she wanted to be noticed. I knew that about her. I just never imagined I'd one day understand why. If I'd been less tired, maybe I would have seen it sooner. But I was working long weeks then, leaving before sunrise, coming home with drywall dust on my sleeves and a headache behind my eyes. Carla complained constantly about being bored, about our town, about my hours, about her life, about the weather, about waitresses who looked at me too long, cashiers who didn't smile at her enough, neighbors who mowed too early. She had a gift for turning every ordinary inconvenience into a personal attack. By the end of most evenings, I was too worn down to examine anything closely. And Carla knew it. That woman could lie with tears in her eyes and fury in her voice at the same time. She could accuse you so loudly you forgot what you were asking her in the first place. Even then, before I knew the worst of her, I knew she had a mean streak in her like a crack in glass, sometimes invisible, sometimes all you could see. Still, I didn't suspect my own brother. Not then. I noticed small things, of course. The way Evan started texting more at the dinner table and smiling at his phone. The way Carla suddenly cared what she looked like on random Tuesdays. The way conversation stopped half a second too late when I walked into a room. Tiny things. Dust-sized things. Easy to brush off if you loved people more than they deserved. And I did. That was my mistake. Looking back now, the affair didn't begin the day I caught them. It began much earlier, in those harmless little visits, in that easy laughter, in the comfort they built right under my nose while I was busy trying to be a decent husband and a loyal brother. That's the ugly part nobody tells you. By the time a man sees the fire, the house has usually been smoldering for a long while already. The first hard crack in that pretty picture came on a Thursday, though I didn't know it was a crack at the time. I got home earlier than usual because a delivery had been delayed, and for once the day let go of me before dark. I remember feeling almost cheerful pulling into the driveway. It had rained an hour earlier, and the whole street had that wet gray shine to it. Carla's car was there. Evan's truck wasn't. That mattered later. When I stepped inside, the house smelled like perfume and fried onions. Carla came around the corner so fast it was almost comical, like she'd been listening for the door with her whole body. She smiled too quickly, then narrowed her eyes at me like I'd done something wrong by coming home to my own place. "You're early," she said. That wasn't a greeting. That was an objection. I told her the job had wrapped ahead of schedule. She gave a little shrug and turned away, but not before I saw something twitch in her face. Not fear exactly. Irritation. The kind a person gets when reality interrupts a plan. I should have paid attention. Instead, I kissed her cheek, set down my lunch pail, and asked what smelled good. She said dinner wasn't for another hour. That was odd, because the onions were already going dark in the pan. Then she told me she'd been trying a new recipe, though Carla hated cooking and treated recipes like personal insults. Another little lie. Small enough to live with. Small enough to miss. While she busied herself at the stove, I walked to the hall bathroom to wash up. That's where I saw it, a men's watch on the counter. Not mine. Evan's. He'd had that same watch for years, a heavy silver thing with a scratched face and one loose link near the clasp. I picked it up and just stared at it. My first thought wasn't suspicion. My first thought was simple: when did he stop by? Carla appeared in the doorway before I'd even called for her. Again, too fast. That's old, she said. I looked at her. It's Evan's. No, it isn't. Now, that was Carla all over. She never tested a lie before speaking it. She just threw it at the wall and expected the volume in her voice to make it stick. I held the watch up between two fingers. I bought this with him 3 Christmases ago. For half a second, her face went blank. Then came the anger. Sudden. Loud. Convenient. So what if he stopped by? She snapped. He brought over that drill you asked about last week. God, do I need your permission to answer the door now? That caught me off balance, because I had asked Evan about a drill. Not that week, but maybe 2 weeks earlier. Close enough for her to weaponize it. Carla was good at that, using one grain of truth to drag a wagon full of lies behind it. I told her she didn't need to start a fight. She laughed this ugly, sharp laugh and said I was the one acting paranoid. Then she stormed past me, grabbed the watch out of my hand, and marched straight to the kitchen like she'd won something. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. Evan. Standing there damp from the rain, breathing a little hard, saying he'd just remembered he left his watch. I can still see the way Carla looked at him over my shoulder. Just one glance. Quick as a knife flash. But it was enough to bother me. Not enough to wake me up. Just enough to plant something in the dirt. And once a bad seed gets planted, it doesn't need much. Just time. Just a little rain. Just one more lie. Now, when a man starts feeling something's wrong in his own house, he usually argues with himself before he argues with anyone else. That's what I did. I remember lying in bed that night beside Carla, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles in the dark. She was asleep, or pretending to be, breathing steady, one arm thrown across the pillow like she didn't have a care in the world. And there I was, running that little moment with the watch over and over in my head. Evan arriving out of breath. Carla grabbing the watch from my hand. That look they shared. But every time my thoughts got close to the truth, something inside me pushed them away. Because the truth would have meant 2 things at once. My wife was betraying me. And my brother was helping her do it. That's a hard pair of doors to open. So I didn't open them. Not yet. Life went on the way it does in small towns, quiet, ordinary, predictable on the surface. I worked. Carla complained. Evan visited. The 3 of us sat around the same living room like actors performing a show that only 2 of them had rehearsed. Looking back now, the signs multiplied like ants once sugar hits the floor. Carla started showering before Evan came over. Not after work. Not before bed. Before he arrived. She'd disappear into the bathroom 20 minutes before his truck usually pulled into the driveway. Hair brushed. Makeup touched up. Perfume just strong enough to notice when she passed by. I asked her about it once. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might stay that way. "Oh my God, Evan is your brother," she said like I'd insulted her. "Do you think the world revolves around you and your stupid jealousy?" That was Carla's method. If she could make you feel ridiculous enough, you'd drop the question just to restore peace. And most nights, I did. But something had shifted in me after that watch incident. Not a full suspicion yet. Just a quiet awareness. Like when you hear a noise in the house at night, and suddenly every little creak feels different. So I started noticing more. Evan laughing a little too easily at Carla's jokes. Carla touching his arm when she talked. Nothing long. Nothing obvious. Just quick, careless little touches that lasted half a second too long. Once, I came into the kitchen and they both stepped away from the counter at the same time. Like magnets, suddenly flipped the wrong direction. Carla immediately started talking. Loud. Fast. Angry about something pointless. The grocery store being out of almond milk, or the neighbor's dog barking too early. She filled the air with noise. Evan kept quiet. That bothered me more than anything. Because my brother had never been a quiet man. Growing up, he was the loud one. The confident one. The one who didn't care what anyone thought. But around Carla, around me, he'd started measuring every word like he was walking across thin ice. And still, I didn't confront him. Part of me didn't want the answer. Part of me still trusted the man I grew up with. Funny thing about betrayal, kid, it almost always wears a familiar face. You don't see the knife because you recognize the hand holding it. And I kept telling myself that hand belonged to family. You know, there's a strange stage before the truth shows its face. A man starts noticing things, but he keeps arranging them in ways that don't hurt as much. Like moving furniture around a room so you don't see the crack in the wall. That's what I was doing that summer. Evan kept coming over. Sometimes 3 nights a week. Sometimes 5. Carla never once complained about it, which was already suspicious, because Carla complained about everything. The mail was late. The neighbors breathed too loud. My boots tracked dirt in the hallway. But Evan? Evan could walk into the house any time he pleased, and she'd light up like someone turned a lamp on behind her eyes. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself she just liked company. But a man can only tell himself a story for so long before reality starts editing it. One evening I came home and Carla wasn't there. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the house itself. The living room window was open even though it had been raining all afternoon. The couch cushions were crooked like someone had been sitting close together. Too close. I stood there in the doorway for a long moment, just looking around my own house like it belonged to somebody else. Then I heard a car pull into the driveway. Carla came in first, carrying 2 grocery bags she clearly hadn't just bought. Evan walked in behind her. They both froze for a split second when they saw me. Just a second. But when 2 people stop breathing at the exact same moment, you notice. Carla recovered first, of course. She always did. "Oh good, you're home," she said too loudly, dropping the bags on the counter. "Your brother was helping me with groceries because apparently my husband is too busy working himself to death to lift a finger around here." That was her trick. Attacked before anyone could question her. Evan stood there rubbing the back of his neck, not meeting my eyes. That bothered me. Because my brother and I had been through fights, debts, busted trucks, broken bones growing up, and he never avoided my eyes before. Not once in 30 years. We ate dinner that night with the television on. Carla talked the whole time. About a coworker she hated, about gas prices, about some woman on Facebook she called a jealous cow. It was noise. Just constant noise. Because silence might have let something real slip out. I remember looking at Evan across the table. He kept pushing food around his plate like a kid who didn't want to be there. And I had this strange feeling sitting in my own kitchen. Like I was the only person in the room who didn't know the punchline to a joke. But the real shift came 3 nights later. That was the first time I came home, and my brother's truck was already in the driveway. At 10 o'clock at night. With all the lights in my house turned off. Now, kid, that was the moment something cold finally settled in my chest. Because even a trusting man knows when something smells wrong. And that night, my house smelled very wrong. I sat in my truck for a minute before getting out. Not because I was afraid. Not exactly. It was more like my instincts had finally started whispering something my heart didn't want to hear. Evan's pickup was parked crooked in the driveway, engine still ticking as it cooled. The porch light was off. Every window in the house was dark. That wasn't normal. If Carla was home, the television was usually blasting something pointless. She hated quiet. Said silence made her feel like the walls were closing in. But that night the whole house looked like it was holding its breath. I stepped out of the truck and closed the door gently. Didn't slam it like I usually did. Funny how the body changes before the mind catches up. I walked up the driveway slower than usual, gravel crunching under my boots. With every step I felt this tight little knot twisting deeper in my chest. I told myself maybe the power was out. Maybe they were sitting in the kitchen talking. Maybe a dozen harmless things. But my gut didn't believe any of them. When I reached the front door, I noticed something else. Evan's work jacket was hanging on the porch railing. He never did that. That man treated that jacket like armor, always on him, always within reach. I opened the door quietly. The house was warm. Too warm. That stale kind of heat that builds when windows stay closed and bodies move around inside. I stepped into the living room and stood there for a second, letting my eyes adjust. Still no lights. Still no voices. Then I heard something. A muffled sound from the hallway. Not words. Movement. A quick shuffle. Then another. The kind of sound two people make when they suddenly realize they're not alone anymore. That knot in my chest pulled tight as wire. I walked slowly down the hallway. Every step felt heavier than the last. The bedroom door was almost closed, but not all the way. Just enough of a crack to let a thin strip of light spill across the carpet. That light shouldn't have been there. We kept the bedroom lamp unplugged half the time because Carla said it made the room look ugly. But that night it was on. And through that narrow gap in the door, I saw a shadow move. Two shadows, actually. Close together. Too close. I stopped right there in the hallway. For a moment I just stood there listening to the blood pounding in my ears. 30 years of knowing my brother. 5 years of marriage. All of it balancing on the other side of that door like a stack of plates about to fall. I remember thinking something strange in that moment. Not anger. Not yet. Just this quiet realization settling over me like dust. If I push that door open, my life is going to look different forever. And kid, sometimes the worst step a man ever takes is only 3 feet long. I reached for the door. And pushed. When the door swung open, the world didn't explode the way you'd expect. There was no shouting at first. No dramatic music like in those cheap television shows. Just a quiet little moment where 3 people looked at each other and realized something permanent had just happened. Evan was standing beside the bed, shirt half on, frozen like a man caught in headlights. Carla was sitting on the edge of the mattress with nothing but a blanket wrapped around her chest. Her hair was a mess, cheeks flushed, eyes wide for exactly half a second. Half a second. Then the storm came. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed at me. Now that was Carla. Not shame. Not guilt. Anger. Loud, wild anger like I'd just broken into her house. For a moment I just stood there in the doorway, taking in the room. My room. My bed. My brother standing 3 feet away from my wife like he'd forgotten how gravity worked. And the strange thing was, I felt calm. Not peaceful. Just very still inside. Evan opened his mouth first. "Look, man." That's all he got out before Carla snapped her head toward him. "Shut up." She pointed at me like I was the criminal in the room. "You don't just barge in here like some psycho. Ever heard of knocking?" I remember blinking slowly at her. 5 years of marriage and that woman still managed to surprise me with the size of her lies. "You're in my bedroom," I said. That was the first full sentence anyone spoke without shouting. Evan's face had gone pale. Not guilty pale. Scared pale. The kind of pale a man gets when he realizes the ground under his feet just disappeared. He kept pulling his shirt on, fumbling with the sleeves like his hands had stopped working properly. Carla, though, she shifted gears faster than a race car. Tears appeared out of nowhere. "I can't believe you're doing this again," she said, voice trembling now. Again. That word hung in the air like smoke. I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" She looked at Evan like she needed an audience. "He does this. He gets paranoid and starts accusing people of crazy things. Evan didn't answer. Didn't look at me. Just stood there staring at the floor. And that hurt more than anything Carla was saying. Because lies are one thing. But silence from your own brother? That's a different kind of knife. Carla kept going, louder and wilder by the second. You think the world revolves around you? Evan came over because I was upset and needed someone to talk to. She clutched the blanket tighter like she was the victim of something terrible. You're sick. You know that? I looked at her. Then at Evan. Then back at the bed. And suddenly a tired little thought drifted through my head like smoke from an old chimney. 5 years, and this is who I married. I nodded slowly. All right, I said. That word confused both of them. Carla blinked. What? I turned toward the hallway. I'll be calling a lawyer tomorrow. And kid, the moment those words left my mouth, the entire room changed again. Because Carla didn't look scared. She looked furious. Now you'd think a woman caught in a moment like that might show a little fear. Maybe regret. Maybe even silence. But Carla wasn't built that way. That woman treated truth like an inconvenience. Something to scream over until people stopped asking questions. When I said I'd be calling a lawyer, she jumped off the bed like the mattress had caught fire. A lawyer? She yelled. Are you out of your damn mind? The blanket slipped, but she grabbed it again, clutching it tight like she was some tragic movie heroine instead of a woman sitting naked with her husband's brother. Evan still hadn't said a word. That bothered me more than Carla's noise. My brother had always been a man who talked his way through trouble. But now he looked like someone had unplugged him from the wall. Carla marched straight toward me. You don't get to walk in here, start accusing people of disgusting things, and then threaten divorce like you're the victim. I leaned against the hallway wall, arms folded. Calm as a man watching a storm through a window. Carla, I said quietly, you're sitting in our bedroom with my brother. She pointed a shaking finger at my chest. And you're acting like a paranoid lunatic. There it was again, the lie delivered with such confidence you almost admired the nerve. She turned to Evan. Tell him. Evan rubbed his face with both hands. For a moment I thought maybe he'd finally speak like a man. Instead he muttered something weak. It's not what it looks like. That line right there, kid, that line has probably been spoken in every betrayal since the beginning of marriage. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not loud. Just a tired little laugh that slipped out before I could stop it. Carla's eyes went wide with rage. Oh, now you're laughing? You think this is funny? I shook my head. No, I said. I think it's over. Those words hit harder than shouting ever could. She froze for a moment. Really froze. Then the insults started flying like gravel in a storm. You're pathetic. You're insecure. No wonder I'm miserable married to you. That last one she shouted so loud the words bounced off the walls. Evan finally looked up then, and the expression on his face, well, it wasn't pride. It wasn't love either. It was the look of a man realizing he'd stepped into something uglier than he expected. I pushed away from the wall and walked toward the living room. Behind me Carla kept yelling, throwing accusations like plates against the floor. You'll regret this. You're ruining everything. You're going to look like an idiot when people find out how crazy you are. I stopped at the front door and turned back once. Evan was still standing there in the hallway. My brother. The kid I used to share a bunk bed with. He couldn't even meet my eyes. And that's when the anger finally arrived. Not loud. Not explosive. Just quiet and heavy, like a door closing somewhere deep inside a man. I stepped outside into the cool night air and shut the door behind me. And standing there in my own driveway, I realized something strange. Catching them together wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Carla still believed she could lie her way out of it. And knowing her the way I did, I had a feeling the real chaos hadn't even started yet. I didn't drive anywhere that night. Funny thing, When a man's life breaks apart, he doesn't always run. Sometimes he just sits there and lets the pieces settle. I stayed in my truck at the end of the driveway for almost an hour. The porch light eventually flicked on behind me, which meant Carla had finally stopped yelling long enough to find the switch. I could hear muffled voices through the open kitchen window. Hers sharp and rapid. Evan's low and nervous. I didn't listen closely. Some conversations aren't worth hearing twice. Around midnight, Evan's truck started up. He backed out slow, headlights sweeping across my windshield. For a second the beams lit up the inside of my cab, and I saw him gripping the wheel like a man driving away from a burning building. He didn't stop. Didn't roll down the window. Didn't even glance my way. That told me everything I needed to know about my brother. I went back inside once the sound of his engine disappeared down the road. The house smelled different now, perfume mixed with that hot, sour smell of anger. Carla was pacing in the living room wearing one of my old t-shirts. Hair still wild, eyes red, but not from crying. From fury. The moment she saw me, the performance started again. "Oh good," she snapped. "The drama king returns." I hung my keys on the hook by the door. "We're getting divorced," I said. No shouting. No speeches. Just the truth sitting there between us. Her face twisted like she'd bitten something bitter. "You're unbelievable," she said. "You barge in, make disgusting accusations about me and your own brother, and now you want to destroy our marriage over your imagination?" I leaned against the kitchen counter and watched her pace. "You were in my bed, Carla." "We were talking!" she shouted. That lie came out so fast I almost admired the reflex. She stormed closer, jabbing a finger toward me. "You're paranoid. You always have been. Evan came over because I needed someone to talk to about how controlling you've become." There it was. She wasn't just denying the affair. She was rewriting the entire story. In her version, I was the unstable husband. Evan was the concerned brother. And she was the poor woman trapped between two difficult men. Carla had always been talented that way. Reality bent easily around her voice. I let her talk. 10 minutes of insults, accusations, dramatic sighs, and fake tears. Finally she crossed her arms and delivered the line she thought would win the argument. "Go ahead," she said. "Call a lawyer. Everyone will hear how you accuse your own brother of sleeping with your wife. You'll look like a complete idiot." That's when I smiled for the first time all night. Not a big smile. Just a quiet one. Because Carla had just revealed something important. She thought I had no proof. She thought what happened in that bedroom would always be my word against hers. And kid, when a person believes they're safe, they get careless. I pushed away from the counter and headed for the hallway. Behind me she shouted, "Where do you think you're going now?" I paused at the bedroom door. Then I said something that made her voice disappear completely. "I'm going to get the security footage." Silence hit the house like a dropped curtain. Because Carla had forgotten one very small detail about our home. 6 months earlier, I'd installed cameras. Now, kid, I wish you could have seen Carla's face in that moment. All the noise drained out of her like someone pulled a plug in the bottom of a bathtub. A minute earlier she'd been pacing around the living room like a courtroom lawyer, shouting, accusing, rewriting history. But when I mentioned the cameras, she stopped. Just froze there in the hallway. "You're lying," she said. Her voice was quieter now. "Careful." I shook my head slowly and walked past her into the bedroom. Carla followed 2 steps behind me, suddenly very interested in what I was doing. 6 months earlier our neighbor's garage had been broken into. A couple power tools gone, nothing dramatic, but it made me think about security. I'd installed 2 cameras outside, one facing the driveway, one covering the front porch and entryway. Nothing fancy. Just practical. I sat down at my desk and opened the laptop. Behind me Carla started talking again, but the confidence was gone now. The words came out faster, thinner. "You're being ridiculous. Cameras don't prove anything." I didn't answer. The footage loaded slowly. Little time stamps flickered across the screen as the video files lined up in rows. Carla moved closer behind me. Too close. I could feel the tension rolling off her like heat from a stove. Even if Evan came over, she said, forcing a laugh, that doesn't mean anything happened. Click. I opened the file from that evening. The porch camera appeared first. There was my truck leaving that morning for work. Then the empty driveway for most of the afternoon. Then, around 4:30, Evan's truck pulled in. Carla stopped breathing behind me. The video showed him walking to the door, knocking once, then stepping inside. No groceries. No tools. No drill. Just Evan. 2 hours later, the same camera showed something else. The bedroom window light flicking on. And then, a second clip from the hallway camera inside the house. Carla's voice cracked behind me. Turn that off. I didn't. The hallway camera wasn't meant for spying, it just covered the front entry and hallway in case of break-ins. But cameras don't care about intentions. They just record. The footage showed Evan and Carla stumbling out of the bedroom together 20 minutes before I came home. Her hair messy. His shirt half-buttoned. Both of them laughing. Carla lunged forward and slammed the laptop shut so hard the screen rattled. For a moment we just stood there. Her breathing fast. Mine steady. Then the hysteria came back like a hurricane. You were spying on me? She screamed. You sick, controlling creep. I leaned back in the chair and looked up at her. No, I said quietly. I was protecting my house. Her eyes burned with something wild now. Not guilt. Not regret. Just the fury of someone whose lies had finally run out of space to hide. And that's when she said something that told me our marriage had been dead long before that night. She looked me straight in the face and spat out the truth like poison. Fine, she said. I slept with him. Then she smiled. But kid, that smile didn't mean victory. It meant the real war was about to begin. Carla stood there smiling like she just won something. That smile told me more than the confession did. Some people admit the truth when they're cornered. Others admit it because they want to hurt you with it. Carla belonged to the second kind. She folded her arms, leaning against the dresser like this was some twisted victory speech. Yeah, she said. I slept with him. The room felt smaller somehow. Not heavier. Just clearer. 5 years of marriage suddenly made sense in ways I hadn't wanted them to. All the complaints. All the fights that started from nothing. All the little ways she chipped away at me until I stopped asking questions. It wasn't chaos. It was preparation. You're unbelievable, she continued, shaking her head like I'd disappointed her. If you weren't such a boring husband, maybe I wouldn't have needed someone else to talk to. That word again. Talk. Funny how people dress ugly things in polite clothes. I stood up from the chair slowly. The laptop was still warm on the desk. The hallway camera had already done its job. Nothing left to prove. Evan's face crossed my mind then. Not the man from tonight, but the kid I used to know. The one who split a candy bar with me on the school bus. The one who helped me rebuild the engine in my first truck. That kid was gone. Standing in my house earlier that night had been a stranger wearing his face. Carla kept talking, pacing again now that the truth was out. You're the one who pushed me away. Always working. Always tired. Never exciting. Evan actually listens to me. I nodded slowly. Maybe she believed that story. People like Carla usually do. I'll be gone in the morning, I said. That stopped her pacing. What? The house is in my name. The lawyer will explain the rest. Her eyes flashed again, that same wild anger I'd seen earlier. You think you're just kicking me out? I shrugged. You already left the marriage. For once, she had no comeback ready. Just silence. I walked past her into the hallway and grabbed a blanket from the closet. Slept on the couch that night. Not because I was heartbroken. That feeling had already burned itself out somewhere between the bedroom door and the security footage. What I felt instead was something quieter. Relief. The next morning, I called a lawyer. The footage made the divorce simple. Evan stopped calling after the first week. Carla tried shouting, crying, blaming, threatening, every trick she had. None of it worked anymore. Because once you see people clearly, their lies lose their power. Now here's the thing I learned from all that, kid. Betrayal doesn't just show you who your enemies are. It shows you who was never really on your side to begin with. And painful as that lesson is, it's still better than spending the rest of your life sitting at a kitchen table with people who are quietly stealing pieces of it.